And if I'm looking out there blankly, it's because I can't see a darn thing once we go past the lights, so I'm not even really certain who's out there. My name is Kathy Austin, and I am your current state senator and very proud to be so. I want to thank the League of Women Voters, the Eastern Chamber of Commerce, and the Day for hosting this debate. I am the oldest of 7 children raised here in Norwich. Very proud of that. My parents owned a small business, a little restaurant that was in the bowling alley over in Norwich, and after that, a little restaurant that my mom ran right down the road. From that, after my dad passed away, we moved down the road a bit. I have 1 daughter, a son-in-law, sorry to say, 4 of the best grandchildren in the world. And I've been up in the General Assembly for 20 months, just like the previous candidates. I'm the chair of the Planning and Development Commission. I am on Labor, Public Safety, and Veterans, and I am the vice chair of Aging. I'm very proud of the work that I've done over the last year and a half, and I look forward to another 2 years to take care of the important work for the 19th District.
Thank you. Mr. Everett.
Good evening. My name is Stephen Everett, and I am running to be your next state senator for the 19th District. My wife and I grew up in Manchester, and I joined the Navy at 17 years old and left. We married 4 years after my first stint, and we settled in Columbia, Connecticut to raise our family. I have 3 children, Stephanie, Joseph, and Christina, who I'm very proud of. And I served in the Navy and Navy Reserves for 33 years, and retiring in 2011. I am a current selectman in the town of Columbia, and having served on the Financial Planning and Allocation Board, which oversees the budget, prior to that. And people always say, why do you want to do this? This is, Well, my daughter got married last year, and she lives in Columbia, 4 miles down the road. So my wife, of Italian heritage, very family-oriented, she says, we're not going anywhere. So I need to make it better. I need to change what's going on in Connecticut, and I need to be part of the solution with your help. And that's what I aim to do. You'll hear a lot of things up here tonight, but I have a vision of the Connecticut we knew and can be. So I ask for your support, and I thank you all for being here, because educated voters are the best voters.
Thank you. First question goes to Senator Austin, and we got a new question during the break, so I thought I'd begin with that before we get to maybe some of the familiar questions. And it's from a senior citizen saying, is there anything that could be done to provide some property tax relief for seniors who are on fixed income but see their taxes going up, their property taxes go up? And we begin with Senator Austin.
Sure. A couple of things that are going on right now is there is a Blue Ribbon Commission that is looking at all of property taxes in the state of Connecticut, and we're looking to revamp the whole structure for seniors, for veterans, for each and every one of us, so that we can actually make the system fairer and more user-friendly. I'm also was the main sponsor for the Elderly Rental Rebate Program, which had been closed off the year that I entered the Senate, and I was able to reopen that for seniors here in Norwich and across the district and across the state, providing relief for seniors in a very dramatic way. So that would be my answer.
Thank you. And Mr. Everett.
Unfortunately, we all have to pay our taxes. It's a necessary evil. But I believe that we can cut taxes for the seniors for what they have to pay. They deserve it. They've earned it. They've set the course for this state before us. But to do this, we have to take a look at the bigger picture and get more jobs in this area. The more people who work, the least or the less of the tax burden falls on the homeowner. And then we can truly look at tax restructuring for seniors on fixed incomes, veterans, whoever can benefit that. But more people who pull the wagon make it easier to do so. So that's my answer. We need to create or get out of the way and let jobs be created in the area.
And next question goes to Mr. Everett. And another new question is, and I can't vouch for this number, but the contention is that roughly a quarter of our children in Connecticut live at or near poverty. And what has to be the approach in our state to lift these kids and their families out of poverty? And Mr. Everett gets the first try at that.
Boy, I think that jobs is going to be the cornerstone of everything we should talk about. The more people we put to work or are allowed to get work through enterprises, through small business innovation, the dreams of people who want to open their own businesses, that's what lift people out of poverty. Letting them do what they want to do, provide for their families, get jobs, and be able to bring home a paycheck. But it means that we have to take regulations that are strangling the innovation of small businesses and do away with them. The different costs of doing businesses in the state have to be looked at and minimized. Jobs is a cornerstone to prosperity and our families. I'm firm on that. You can be no prouder at the end of a week when you come home with a paycheck and you're able to provide for your family. So we need to work on revitalizing Eastern Connecticut and bringing jobs to the area. Everybody needs to help themselves. And, providing a way for them to make a living is truly the cornerstone.
And Senator Austin, we're a very wealthy state, but with a lot of poor children. What do we need to do to lift them out of that poverty?
So in some ways, I agree with Mr. Everett that we need to work on the job situation here. We have started that through coalitions that have happened with the Eastern Workforce Investment Board, with the Department of Economic and Community Development, by forming the Eastern Alliance, the Eastern Advancement of Manufacturing Alliance. I was one of the only legislators to go to their annual meeting to talk about manufacturing jobs, to look at sheet metal fabrication at our community colleges. As a matter of fact, just most recently was at a press conference over at Three Rivers, where we will have sheet metal fabrication happening over at Three Rivers. But we have the original problem of children that are living in poverty. And until we can lift them out of that poverty, we have to provide them with resources. And that's part of the safety net that we have here in Connecticut. We have to make sure that they have enough food to eat, that their houses are warm, and that we are providing enough resources for them to be successful in our schools. And those are things that we have to do on an interim basis as a safety net for us to move forward. We have started working on our manufacturing in this area, and I'm proud of the work that we've done to act in a coalition fashion with the private sector, with the public sector, and with the Eastern Workforce Investment Board.
Excuse me, do we get to?
Yes, certainly.
I think the sheet metal program is fantastic, but I honestly don't know if there's a lot of calling for sheet metal workers out there. The manufacturing jobs are leaving Connecticut. If we haven't noticed, there's a lot of mills that are shut down because the manufacturing is gone. Let me tell you a little bit about me. As a child, my father got ill, became ill. We lost a house to foreclosure, and we were on food stamps. I would never take away the needs of the children to be able to sustain and grow and have a good life. Never. It helped me. But interim basis becomes permanent basis if we don't allow them to pick themselves up and provide for their families. And that means training, and that means jobs, and we have the means and the ways to do that. We cannot lift up everybody. That's not our job. In addition to that, those who waste, fraud, and abuse the system that helps provide for them until they can get on their feet, that has to be addressed, and it has to be gone after in an aggressive manner. But I want to reiterate, if they need, truly need, I would never take it away.
Senator Austin, while we're on that topic, a good discussion. Have good intention war on poverty programs created a culture of dependency where people remain perpetually on public programs?
I do not believe that that has been the case. Most people I know want to work. They want to get out and have a job and support their families. That's what they work towards. That's something that's extremely important to them, and it fills people with a whole host of self-worth. I believe that there is a need for sheet metal fabrication in eastern Connecticut because the manufacturers are asking for that. This was a coalition of some 30 manufacturers in the area who have thrived and are thriving and are creating new and more jobs, to include getting us ready for the next rounds of submarines that will happen down at Electric Boat. So I do not believe the programs provide a culture of people who are only looking for the next handout from the government. I think they are looking for ways to be proud and work and support their own families.
Okay, our next question goes to Senator Austin. We talked about it in the first debate. There's quite a discussion in the gubernatorial election about the governor's approach to try to get the economy moving with his First Five program, his Small Business Express programs, and trying to provide incentives for companies to stay or move to Connecticut. Mr. Foley takes a much different view and calls this corporate welfare and says it's not going to work. I'd like to start with Senator Austin, your opinion on that topic.
On both the Small Business Express, the JET program, and a variety of other economic driver programs, I think they have been good for the area. But not only have they been good for the state of Connecticut, they're also done in other states who are looking to move companies from our state to them by providing them with economic resources, whether it's through no taxes for 5 years. This is not just a new system that's happened in Connecticut. As a matter of fact, most of eastern Connecticut have enterprise corridor zones which provide for tax reliefs for 5 years, and these programs have been around for some 30 years. This is not a new situation. It is a little bit more aggressively dealt with under Governor Malloy, but this enterprise corridor zones and providing resources for businesses has been something that's been around for a long time and is used in some 40 other states. I do not want to put Connecticut at an economic disadvantage by allowing businesses to go to those states who are providing the same resources.
Thank you. Mr. Everett, your impressions of the tack that the governor has taken towards trying to drive economic development?
Well, I think it's wrong. To choose or handpick 5 and give them relief or taxpayers' monies with the promise that they may, in time, deliver more jobs is wrong. My opponent said areas are giving no taxes for 5 years. Here's a novel idea. Let's cut taxes for all businesses, small and large. Let's cut the operating costs of doing business in Connecticut, the highest gas tax in continental United States, increased energy costs. Let's take a look at why businesses want to leave Connecticut. It's the cost of operating here. We need to restructure all of that. And I don't care if you're a mom and pop who own a restaurant or you have 2,000 employees. We need to make sure that the business climate is good for all. So if no taxes draws businesses away from Connecticut, maybe we ought to look at lowering taxes on how we have businesses pay here. Operating costs, unemployment taxes. There's a lot of different areas that market them out of Connecticut. And if it's good for the big people, it's good for the little people.
So if I could just
Sure, certainly.
respond to that. I think that many people are not yet aware, and quite frankly should be aware, that right now we forgive in Connecticut personal property taxes for manufacturers across the board, And it is something that I consider to be very important and is an economic driver for those businesses. Last year, a bill that I sponsored and passed has now stabilized workers' compensation costs for businesses. It was a piece of legislation that, that looked at what businesses were paying for workers' compensation and helps out small, medium, and large businesses. It helps out the state of Connecticut in the tune of a seven-figure stabilization of workers' compensation. Electric Boat, one of our largest employers, was a business that looked to this piece of legislation passing, and we're pleased to see it pass. It was one that I was the main sponsor of. I held a forum on workers' compensation, and I will continue to work to drive down those costs for businesses. Now, a small business may only save a couple of $1,000s, but large businesses were saving six figures, and I was very pleased to introduce that bill. It took 2 years to pass, and it was successful to pass this last session, and it was passed on a bipartisan basis on consent. So I was very pleased with that.
Mr. Everett, you want last word on this one before we move to another question?
Workman's compensation insurance it's a very complex formula. It's risk, it's the type of job, it's the salaries that you pay. It can get kind of complex. I talked, and I had hoped this would come up because businesses talk to me all the time, small businesses, and the workers' compensation that they're seeing relief from is because they have less employees, not because of a restructure of the workers' compensation. It's because they're employing less people, so their workers' compensation structure is decreasing. So they're seeing some savings, but that's not, for them, a true savings. They want to put people to work. Businesses are in business to make money, and they want people to work so they can attain that for everybody. So the workers' compensation savings that they're seeing is really a downsize in some of their employees.
I would just like to say that NCCI, the company, the institution that rates workers' compensation costs here in Connecticut, says that Connecticut is seeing a decrease in workers' compensation costs, not as a result of employees, as a result of the policies that have been passed, and they were also in favor of that piece of legislation that I sponsored.
All right, let's give Mr. Everett a chance. Next question. Again, I remind the candidates, I appreciate them looking over here. I ask a question. They're being polite, but the audience and the cameras out there, just kind of keep that in mind. The question for Mr. Everett is, we hear a lot of criticism about too much regulation, too much red tape. I think you've already brought it up. Do you have any, for instances of changes you would try to make if elected to reduce that regulatory burden?
I had a gentleman, we did a forum last week, Thursday night in Marlborough, and it was well attended. And afterwards, I had a gentleman come up and talk to me about the Small Business Express, and he had taken advantage of that. Had gotten a loan from the state at low interest and was able to make some additions to his business. And he said to me, you know, it took a long time, and at the point where I almost walked away because of the paperwork and the forms and the regulations and to prove this and to prove that, he said, I almost walked away from it. It wasn't worth my time. If we have a good program like that and people are saying it's too hard to get or it takes too much of their time to benefit from that, we need to listen to them. We need to take care of some of that regulation and do away with it. The other thing that I've heard is, like in the last debate, we pass a lot of bills or laws, or we pass a lot of forms for regulations. We never seem to do away with any, so we just keep piling on. So, oh yeah, you have to fill out this form. Why? Because in 19 whatever, somebody said we had to. So we need to take a look at how we can streamline, how we take care of, good programs and different things that handcuff businesses so we can get them through. We have to take a look at that.
Senator Austin?
Thank you very much. The Small Business Express program has provided needed financial resources for businesses to both expand and increase their productivity. I've talked to many businesses, including businesses up in Marlboro Plastics, as one of those key businesses that thought the program was a very good program. They could see some streamlining, but they also liked the fact that the program was there and was able to help them out, and they have increased their business. As a matter of fact, they've increased the complete size of their business, opening up a whole new building. And here in Norwich, New England Glass increased the size of their business and increased the size of their workforce with a Small Business Express program, something that they were very pleased to have. And I asked them specifically, what were some of the things that we could have done better? They thought that it was not an onerous program to be part of. They liked the fact that they had to provide a business plan so that they knew that they weren't just getting, in quotes, free money, that there were some regulations and some oversight on that. In regards to rules and regulations that have been around forever, there has been a weeding out of old rules and regulations. Often what happens is they get replaced with updated rules and regulations, so you may not know that the old ones have been eliminated. There was a bill, again sponsored through the Planning and Development Committee, that eliminated some state-funded mandates, and I was proud to be a part of that. I do think that we need to look at it a little bit more and get rid of some of the older rules and regulations that have not yet been addressed. Now, the Department of Energy and Environmental Protection has done an excellent job of eliminating and decreasing the amount of time it takes to get a permit. I would like to see that extended into the Department of Transportation so that we can make it quicker in that realm also.
Senator Austin, but on the topic, we've heard the contention a lot. I've been having many of these debates that onerous regulations are one reason Connecticut is not doing better. Do you think that's a bit of a red herring? That's not really a major factor in why Connecticut's not doing better?
I don't think that that's the whole answer. I think that when people talk about unfunded mandates, they talk about unfunded mandates, but they don't give a specific. One town meeting that I was in said that the sex offender registry was an unfunded mandate. And I'm not interested in getting rid of the sex offender registry. I think it's very important. So I would have to see specificity in the rules that people are talking about. The Small Business Express program has been successful. It is something that I think that we should keep around, and I'm pleased to be a part of that.
Anything further, Mr. Everett, before we
Well,
go?
I just want to say that Senator Austin actually agreed with me. I said it was a good program when used correctly, but this business told me it was difficult in regulations and forms and what they had to, and she said, yes, she has heard the same thing. So we need to, for good programs, streamline it, make it fair, and get it out there, because if it is a good program and it'll help businesses expand, that's exactly what we're looking for.
Thank you. Next question goes to Senator Austin. Came up in the first debate, and I got several of the cards. Questions concern this issue, and it's the release by the state of sex offenders into the Norwich community from state prisons or halfway programs. And we had the incidents of discovery of 4 individuals in a single apartment building, all state subsidized rentals. Is this a problem? If it is a problem, what could you as a legislator do about it? And we begin with Senator Austin.
So I, as a private citizen, worked on what is now referred to as Megan's Law many years ago. I was one of the main proponents of that piece of legislation, working with a group called CHILD, Citizens Helping Institute Legal Deterrence. I'm very pleased that the sex offender registry is working, that we now know who sex offenders are and where they are. We have done a much better job of arresting and convicting sex offenders, and I think that needs to be pointed out in this whole discussion. I also am very pleased to have been the main proponent bringing back Erin's Law into the General Assembly both last year and having it passed on a bipartisan basis this year, which provides sex education, sex abuse prevention programs within the school system along the lines of a safe touch and an unsafe touch and a safe secret and an unsafe secret. In addition to that, I'm working on a task force by the town of Montville that looks at senior safety zones, and we are looking at, in that program, a tiered system for sex offenders, because on the sex offender registry are people who have committed heinous crimes. They're all heinous, so let's say that, that are violent sex offenders or pedophiles. Those are the 2 types of sex offenders, and having worked in the Department of Correction for 21 years, I met many of them. They're not nice people, and we need to keep a very close eye on them. Specifically, and in addition to that, that tiered system was recommended to all of the legislators in the Norwich area by Chief Fusaro from the Norwich Police Station, because it's very successful in other states. In addition to that, in other states, there is more information on the sex offender registry, and I think that has to also be made available to people so that they can actually know what someone has done to end up on the sex offender registry. Often what happens is young men and young women get involved in consensual relationships, and they may be 3 or 4 years apart in age, and that can still lead to someone being put on the sex offender registry, and I think that they don't necessarily provide the harm that a pedophile or a violent sex offender would. I also think that we need to look at the sentencing structure of sex offenders. I think sex offenders need to serve longer times in jail. Specifically, the REACH program, the reentry program out of parole or probation, takes people who are not necessarily coming out of the Department of Correction. They are also coming out of the Judicial Department. 2 different branches of government feed people out into our neighborhoods. And in the REACH program, people are housed around. Not every REACH bed is a sex offender bed. In Connecticut, in Norwich, there are about 130 sex offenders. The Department of Children and Families says Eastern Connecticut has the highest rate of sex offenders and has, for some 20-plus years, had the highest rate of sex offenders. Again, I point out that we now arrest and convict and know where sex offenders are. I think there needs to be some more work on the REACH program. They're not designed for permanent housing. It's designed for housing, whether someone is a sex offender or not, whether they might be someone who's released from prison or released out of the judicial system.
We gotta
and
wrap up.
as a temporary housing for 6 months. And so the three things I would like to see is to have a tiered tiered system on the sex offender registry, increased information, and increased sanctions for sex offenders.
Mr. Everett, the question was the concerns about the sex offenders being discharged into this community.
First of all, it's a terrible situation. And like in the debate before, it's a very difficult to come up with the correct answer. You have sex offenders who have to live somewhere. To get a job, they're fighting with people who don't have records to get jobs, to be able to sustain where they live and feed themselves. So it's a very difficult situation. I'm not sure I have the answer for it, to be honest with you. Listen, everybody out there does not want a sex offender living next door, or never mind a house with 4 of them in there. But to come up with some sort of seclusion. So I honestly don't truly know the answer to that question, all right? But I want to address something that my opponent said, and I agree with her wholeheartedly. That sex offenders should do the maximum time that they're convicted for. They should not be let out early. And that's why when sex offenders came up on the early release program, and it was passed that they qualified to get early release from their sentences by taking fluff classes, and I know this because I talk to corrections officers, healthy eating classes, and when they take these classes, they get credits for that. And this was a program that was actually said no by the Corrections Officer Union. They were against the early release program. But it passed. Governor Malloy signed the early release for murderers, sex offenders, the worst of the worst people out there. And then when it came up to be amended to not allow these people out of prison on an early release program, my opponent voted against that. She allowed them to be released. So I guess I have one thing to say. I will look into where these people go, but you should know where they are. I agree with that. And you should know what they've done. But when they go to prison, on my watch, I will vote to keep them there to the extent of their sentence. If they do 1 day more, it couldn't please me more.
So,
Can I give you a
I
chance
just
to
have
respond on that? Yeah,
because-
on that point, certainly.
Because there are crimes that are not allowed on the early release program. The early release program was not voted on under my watch. The early release program was voted on before it was elected. So that is not something that I voted on.
Right, I said that.
And I want to make sure that you know that we added in to the non-permitted crimes, other crimes that were heinous, so that they would not be eligible for the early release program. And to be very clear, I am endorsed by the Corrections Officer Union and one of the very few legislators that have been endorsed by the State Police Union because of my record on public safety. And to be very clear, I don't believe sex offenders should ever get out early. I know that they don't get enough time, often because their victims are unable to testify against that. So to be very clear, I have never said that sex offenders should be let out early, and as a result of the work that I have done, we now know who those sex offenders are, and that is as a result of an extremely personal, situation that happened where I had a family member who was molested, and the person who molested my family member lives within 5 miles of me today, is not on the sex offender registry, because before that time frame, there was no sex offender registry. Before I started working on this issue, it wasn't even a felony to molest a child. It is now, as the result of the work that I have done, and it is, quite frankly, the work that I have done that has allowed us to find out and arrest and convict sex offenders, who I personally find abhorrent.
I just want to clarify a point. Can we see the times, though? I have a feeling.
I can't really see that far away.
I'll help you out here. We have an imbalance here. Senator Austin, you got 4 minutes left, and your opponent has over 9 minutes left.
Well, I'd like to use
So-
a few of my minutes if I could.
And just to clarify the point, because I thought I heard you say that the senator had a chance to vote on an amendment that would have taken sex offenders out of that early release program, and she didn't support that amendment. So if you could I want to get that clarified for myself and our audience.
First of all, I want to say that no parent, no child should have to go through that. None. But when those acts are committed, those people need to go away. They need to go away. And I know that the amendment, some of the heinous and worst of the worst crimes, okay, sexual in the first degree, aggravated assault is where it stops. You have sexual assault in the first degree, without aggravation, I guess. Second degree sexual assault, those are inmates that are allowed to be released early for these class credits and lifestyle, promises that they make. And it needs to go away. It truly needs to go away. So when I'm in Hartford, I will support a bill to repeal the early release program. Just this week, an early release prisoner went through the window and killed a 10-year-old girl. We can't have it. We can't have it. So make no mistake about it. I feel for the senator. I'm a parent. I don't know how I could contain myself. I don't know how I could go on day to day. I give her a lot of credit. And the work that she's done is good work, because those people deserve all that they get. But when it comes to early release, not on my watch. Not on my watch.
But is it your contention she had a chance to vote on an amendment that would have broadened that list, and she voted no?
Yes.
And Senator, is that?
Though we voted to broaden the
Okay.
categories. So-
All right, we'll have
But
to
not
leave.
enough.
Okay, we'll have to leave that for another day. Senator Dawson, just be aware of the time limitation. The Citizens Election Program, was intended to keep outside money, state contractors, people doing business with state from donating to campaigns and gaining influence, at least at the gubernatorial level. Despite both candidates getting $6.5 million, we're seeing that outside money come in through the federal back door. Do you continue to support the Citizens Election Program, and do we need changes to it to close loopholes? Senator Austin?
I support the citizen election program because it allows people who would not normally be able to run. I do think that we need to look at the dollars that come in from these from groups that are on the aside through the federal system, and I would like to see us work on that, because I think way too much money is in elections.
And Mr. Everett?
I agree. I mean, everybody should have the ability to run a fair and balanced campaign, no doubt about it. But at taxpayers' expense, how much money they give to every race, I heard $30-something million every 2 years or every gubernatorial, every 4 years. I think that's ridiculous. I think that it can be cut back to at least half of that, to be honest with you. I mean, it costs a lot of money to run a campaign, but if everybody worked with the same amount of dollars, you'd be a little bit more innovative or choose wisely how you spent it.
So you support it, but feel the awards are excessive right now. Is that?
I do.
Okay.
I mean, raise your hand if you could go with a few less governor commercials. Or, excuse me, candidates for the governor. Both of them, okay? I could take a few less, you know, so.
And if this question goes to Mr. Everett, your position on the Connecticut core curriculum, do you support it? Do you oppose it? Do you think it needs some fine tuning? And we'll start with Mr. Everett.
I deal with a little personal conflict on this, okay? I have many friends who are teachers, and I have a daughter and her friends who are teachers. The Common Core, as I'm told, is supposed to be the foundation, not the curriculum, of how we teach our children. When I ask my daughter about it, she's very versed in it, she understands it, and she says, Dad, when you teach the children math, you have to make sure it adheres to the foundation or the theory of Common Core. You can be innovative, you can teach standardized stuff, but it has to just adhere to the foundation. But then you talk to seasoned administrators or teachers, and they say, and I think they're kind of bitten because they were forced to teach to the test for so long, they feel that their hands were tied when it came to the classroom. So at this point, I need to talk to more teachers, more administrators, more parents. Right now, I would hold off on it because it is so contentious and it's not really clear. And the last thing we want to do is continue to throw it to the classroom and have it not working as it should. Maybe we need to go back and take a look at how it's implemented or was implemented and what it truly means to the classroom. But right now, we need to back off on it until it's clear.
And Senator Austin, my correction, I called it Connecticut Common Core curriculum. It should be Connecticut Common Core standards. I know there's quite a difference with the wording, so just to
Correct.
clarify. Senator Austin.
So I've also talked with teachers, I've talked with superintendents and principals, and I've talked with boards of education, attending many of the Connecticut Association of Boards of Education meetings. And the CABE's position, the Connecticut Association of the Boards of Education, is that it is committed to the successful implementation of Common Core standards and strongly urges the state to provide financial means for all 166 districts in Connecticut to properly integrate the standards into their curriculum, that the curriculum choice, the standards preserve what the American Federation of Teachers calls the freedom for curriculum choice as local teachers, principals, superintendents, and school boards continue to make decisions about curriculum and how their school system operates. That's from the Connecticut Association of the Boards of Education, and they strongly support Common Core and are opposed to us holding off on it and not working through the process.
All right, next question goes to Senator Austin, and your opinion on whether there should be any effort to repeal or in some way amend the gun bill that was passed in 2013 and is proved so controversial. Senator Austin.
So most people would already know that I voted against the gun legislation, and I believe very strongly that it did not provide what it said it would do, and that is increased public safety. I believe much akin to as what was previously spoken about, that this is a mental health issue that was not addressed correctly. I would look to change and working within the systems as they are now, to change some of the onerous rules and regulations that we've put on our legal gun owners, our hunters, our sportsmen. I think we've put them at a significant disadvantage. They are, it's just, in my opinion, was an emotional reaction to an extremely bad situation, and I've not changed my opinion on that.
Mr. Everett?
Well, I agree with that. I do. I'm, pro Second Amendment. I'm pro Bill of Rights and Constitution, and this is what this country was founded on. What happened that day would happen again if you had a 7-round clip or a 30-round clip. The response time, the security, there were so many factors that made it a perfect storm. We all wish we could turn back the clock, right? But it truly was a mental health issue. When you saw the picture of that person in the newspaper, you knew. But I think what happened was that in the last debate, they said he didn't try to seek, his parents didn't try to seek aid for him. And I've read that the mother tried. The mother tried. We need to be able to listen to people who are around these children, teachers, parents. When they sound the alarm, we need to take it seriously. And I don't mean you ostracize or you put a stigma on somebody. No, you can talk to the children. You can give them therapy. You can look into what's going behind or why people have concern and be able to help them if they need it. Confidentially, caring, loving. But when the system fails to provide the needs for these types of people, and if it's done early, I believe it's best. But when the system fails, that's why Newtown happened. It wasn't a gun issue. And I will tell you, I was at the first debate, and I was sitting probably right out there. And I listened to the governor, and I was a little bit appalled, to be honest with you, when he said, now I will paraphrase, but I've watched it a couple of times. When the moderator said, would you go after those newly made felons based on the gun law? And he said, well, we're trying to make contact with them, and, they were supposed to register, and they didn't. And then he said, we're really not even sure that they have those weapons or they have those high-capacity magazines anymore. And I thought, that's a problem right there. That's a problem right there. And the fact that there wasn't, not that I want him to go after those felons, the bill has to be repealed. It has to be repealed because it made felons out of over 200 people, law-abiding citizens. But when he said, we're kind of making contact and stuff, that proved to me that it was a feel-good, knee-jerk reaction to a horrendous event. And it needs to be repealed. There's too many law-abiding citizens out there that were hurt by this, and it did not even touch on the true problem that happened that day.
Thank you. Can we see our time? We've caught up. We're about a minute and a half each, and we got one question left, and you're going to have a minute and a half to get to it. And it's going to start with Mr. Everett, and our timekeepers will count down. I'll give you a heads up if you have run out. And it's an interesting question. Someone points out that Governor Malloy has pumped millions of dollars into Norwich public schools through the Alliance District, Neckworth School Grants, and other communities such as Norwich. Yet you'll be representing towns in your rural towns that don't get that kind of aid. And the questioner is wondering, can the state really continue to afford that level of funding earmarked for specific communities? And we'll begin with Mr. Everett.
Well, let's be honest, there's some towns in the 19th that don't need that type of funding. They're fortunate enough to be a little bit more affluent than the Norwich area. Norwich has struck very hard in the last, 30 years in the economic downcline, and certainly has not recovered, as the state hasn't, from the recent recession. We need to make sure that there's education for the children out there. We talked about lifting up. There's no way we're lifting up people who, if we can't provide a good education. But education, I believe, is basically like a three-legged stool. There's the Board of Ed and the administration that needs to set policy and provide what they need for funding to try and get it. And then there's the teachers, the everyday people who deal with the children, who see them and know where they stand and what they need. And then the other important leg of the stool is home, the family. To be able to make sure that they're adhering for their homework and attending school, and you take away one leg of that stool and it's going to fall. So Norwich is a place that needs the income based on what's happened here. But I'll go back to the jobs. If we can provide a better economic recovery for this area, more people pay into it, more people are proud to be the citizens of Norwich, and they're able to take care of their families and provide for them. But they need the funding.
And thank you. Time is up. And Senator Austin, the question about the amount of money that goes to these special districts, and can the state continue to sustain that?
So I think the state has to continue to sustain that. There are certain towns in the state that need additional resources for school funding, and I will fight to make sure that those schools receive that funding, in particular Norwich. Norwich has had a need for additional school funding for a number of years, and it was neglected. We are just starting to see a turnaround in the Norwich school system and an increase in the state in regards to graduation levels at the high school level. I look forward to providing Norwich with that funding, and as a matter of fact, I would love to see us increase school funding here in Norwich. I've also fought for the other 9 towns in the district to see increased funding for their schools too. I was immensely proud of working for funding for pre-K. I think it's a vital piece of the puzzle for us to get a good educational system, and that is to provide pre-K education for more of our students across the state, in particular in Norwich, Montville, Ledyard, Sprague, Lisbon, Franklin, Marlborough, Hebron, Lebanon, and Columbia, and I'm very proud to have kept that funding stable.
Time is up, and you got all the towns in. That was very close. Now we move to closing statements, and we begin with Stephen Everett. 1 minute.
Thank you very much. I love meeting the people. I love talking about things. You have an important decision to make this November 4th. I hope to be your next senator. You know, Pope Francis said, one of the things that you can do in life to truly give is to serve. And I served my country for 33 years, and I have more to give, and I want to do it right here in our district. Connecticut's in a bad way, and we need to change direction. We need to change policies. We need to change how we look at doing business and how we cost business needed resources to be able to provide jobs, bring people in for increased goods and services. I want to put more money back in your pocket so you can purchase more goods and services. That's how you create jobs. And I cannot wait to revitalize using the railroad as a staple to be able to get Norwich up and moving. Jobs is the key to the revitalization of Norwich.
Thank you. Well, 1 minute, Kathy Austin.
I want to thank everybody for coming tonight. It's been a pleasure to speak in front of you yet again. I'm Kathy Austin. I'm your state senator, and I'm proud of the job that I've done for the last 2 years. And I plan on continuing in that vein for the next 2. I think Connecticut's a great place to be. I love it. I'm not going anywhere. I also am a Vietnam-era veteran. I have worked in the Department of Correction for 21 years. I love serving people and working towards completing and helping people out. It's been an honor for me to help out Elaine Burns in Columbia with her son's traumatic brain injury and making sure that we had an acquired brain injury waiver. It's been an honor for me to work on dyslexia legislation for Allison Quirion in Hebron. It's been an honor for me to help out Waquanic Village here in Norwich when they were having bad property managers that were not allowing the seniors to have a place to be. Thank you very much for letting me speak here in front of you today.
All right, thank you, and maybe applause for our candidates.